to get festive and make some heart-shaped cookies. The recipe that I am using to make these cookies, you could totally use for like any type of cookie. They don't have to be for Valentine's Day. They don't have to be heart-shaped. But because of the holiday, I decided to show you guys my favorite recipe for sugar cookies. And sugar cookies happen to be my favorite kind of cookie, so I'm super excited. So without further ado, let's get into the video. For our ingredients, we're going to need 4 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of sugar, 1 2/3 cup of butter, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 egg. We are also going to need some utensils, so I have 1 large mixing bowl, 1 small mixing bowl, a whisk, and a mixing spoon. I also have some heart-shaped cookie cutters for our Valentine's theme, and for our icing we'll need some powdered sugar, some milk, and some red food coloring. I am starting by adding my 4 cups of flour to the smaller bowl, and I'm using my whisk to get any big lumps or parts that have just kind of clumped together out, so our mixture is nice and smooth. And then I'm adding my 1 teaspoon of baking powder and using my whisk to mix that in very well. Next, I'm adding my softened butter to my larger bowl, and I'm using my whisk to cream that together just to make sure that all of my other ingredients will mix in well. And then I'm adding my 1 cup of sugar to my creamed butter and going back in with my mixing spoon to mix that all together until it is completely blended. And then I'm breaking 1 egg into the mixture and using my mixing spoon again to just stir that in and make sure it is completely stirred in. You don't want like big chunks of yellow raw egg in there, so I'm making sure it is completely mixed together. And then I'm adding my teaspoon of vanilla extract and mixing that in very well to the whole mixture. So I'm just continuing to stir this around and make sure it's completely blended, and then I'm going to start adding my dry ingredients to my wet ingredients little by little. So I'm adding just a little bit and then stirring that in with my spoon, and once I feel like it's blended in pretty well, I will add another little bit of dry ingredients. And then I pretty much just follow this process until all of my dry ingredients is completely blended into my wet ingredients. As you continue to do this, you will notice how the dough really starts to form and it starts looking more like cookie dough and less like mush. So after I have a good bit of the dry mixed in there, I'm actually going to go in with my hands and start kind of just kneading the dough to make sure it's really well mixed, because it can be kind of hard to mix this with a spoon because it is so thick, and I find it much easier to use your hands. Once everything is completely blended together, I'm going to spread some flour out onto my counter to keep it from sticking to the countertop. And I also sprinkled a little flour on top of my dough because we are going to use our rolling pin to roll it out, and I didn't want it to stick to it. So I'm rolling mine out pretty thick because I like thicker cookies, and then I'm setting my oven to 400 degrees to let it preheat. And then I'm using my heart-shaped cookie cutters to just make a bunch of different hearts, and I used a couple different sizes so that there was a good variety going on. So as you can tell, I'm just pressing the cookie cutter into the dough and kind of wiggling it around a little just to make sure it's completely cut out, and it will make it much easier to get up in a minute. So next I am peeling the excess dough from around all of my heart shapes. So then I will just be left with a bunch of hearts on the counter, and you can do them one at a time, but I just find it much easier to go ahead and peel all the excess off and then use a spatula to pick the hearts off of the counter and put them onto a cookie sheet. So I just lined all of my heart-shaped cookies onto an ungreased cookie sheet about a ½ inch to an inch apart, and then I'm going to pop them in the oven. So I put one sheet on the top rack and the second sheet on the bottom rack, and then I set my timer for 7 minutes. While they're cooking, I'm going to make the icing by adding some powdered sugar to 3 separate bowls, and then I'm adding a little bit of milk to the powdered sugar, and it's best to do it little by little. So I'm just stirring it around until I get it to the right consistency, and you don't want it too watery, but you don't want it too thick either, because I do like for it to kind of fall down the edge of my cookie. So I'm doing all 3 of the bowls until I get them to the right consistency. And then for the first one, I'm adding a lot of red food coloring because I want it to be a very distinct dark red color. I actually ended up adding another drop just to make sure it was just a really dark red color. And then for the second one, I added a very tiny drop of red to make this a very light pink. So I would have a really distinct red and then just a kind of faint pink color. And then I left the last bowl white so we could have white, pink, and red icing. And then I am spreading some wax paper out on my counter, and I am adding my cookies to the wax paper, and I'm waiting until they are completely cooled off so we can start icing them. I decided to do this one pink, so I'm putting a blob of icing into the middle and just spreading it out with my spoon. I am using a pretty generous amount of icing because cookies are only good if you put a ton of icing on them. So I'm using my spoon to just spread that all around, and I'm also putting it down the edges too, so the cookie is fully covered, and then I'm adding some sprinkles. For this one, I decided to do it white, so I'm just pretty much doing the exact same thing I did on the other cookie, just starting in the middle and spreading it around. You could also use a paintbrush for this step if you wanted to, but I find a spoon just a little bit easier and you can get it nice and fully covered. So I'm adding some pretty little sprinkles to this one, and it is finished. I decided to do these 2 little guys in this red color, and I'm really happy with the way this turned out. It is super like festive and Valentine's Day themed. So I'm adding some white sugary sprinkles to the first one and some really cute little white snowflakes to the second one. So then I am just decorating the rest of my cookies, and I'm kind of alternating between the white, pink, and red. So we have a lot of different Valentine's Day colors going on here, and I think these turned out so cute, and they are so yummy. Decorated and dried, I added them to this cute little Valentine's Day plate, and you could set them out at a party or something like that. I bought these 2 little heart-shaped boxes, and I added some wax paper to both of them so I could give these as a gift. So I'm just filling them with all different shapes and sizes of my little heart cookies. And I think these are just super adorable. I think these make the perfect gift for someone on Valentine's Day. There is nothing better than getting something homemade that they know you put a lot of effort into. So after my boxes are full, I'm adding my lids back on them, and these turned out so adorable, guys. I am so happy with the way these look and taste. I really hope you guys try this recipe out. If you do, send me a picture on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. Bye, guys!